Morning guys, and welcome back to Bareham Engines. Right guys, we've got another block here from Bob Dove, and this is a Coventry Climax block actually. So these have got a slide-in liner, but they're not like the Alphas. I've got an Alpha block over there which I've got to do for Bob in a minute, but this is a sort of, it's a dry liner, but it's a slide-in, fully finished liner. So what we've got to do is get 2 to 3 thou liner protrusion above the top of the block. So what I've had to do, Bob doesn't want any tuck off the actual block, so I've had to clock the block in. In one of my last videos you did see me using a height gauge, but I had a bit of a rollicking off a couple of you people for being lazy and using the height gauge. So what I've actually done is clock it with the clock off the machine in the X and the Y axis, and we've got it absolutely cock on. And then fortunately with these liners, they are a sort of snug slide fit really. So I've been able to, because they're sort of, I suppose they're semi-finished on the height but fully finished internally, we've got about 15 thou protrusion, so I've got to take about 12 or 13 thou off them. And so as I say, I've clocked the outside of the block, and then I've managed to face them in situ rather than take them out individually and do them in the lathe, because they're held in there, the sort of interference fit that they've got. So these will pull out, but you sort of got to tap them from the bottom really. So we've just got to make sure that they're sitting down properly in their home position, and just feeling that feels 2 to 3 thou-ish. So just going to measure that now with our height gauge. So I've just measured those liners, going off sort of 2 at a time in the middle of each one, and we're getting about 3.5 to 4 thou. So I've just took another thou off these and see what we get. Rather sort of too little than too much at a time. So as you can see, we're just doing a 1 thou cut there, and we'll see how that comes out. Right, so job number 2 for Bob here. This is the Alfa Romeo, and as you can see, these are a sliding liner, but these are actually a wet liner. So they locate in the bottom of the block, and you've probably got about 2 inches of the bottom of the liner which locate into the base of the block, and then the base of the liner has got a sort of a big flange seat on it which locates into the block. Now obviously with these Alphas, most of them have had quite a bit of work done in the past. We've seen quite a lot of the time where either the face has been welded up, or even the base of the block corrodes like buggery, because obviously people don't use antifreeze as they should, and then remachined. But what it looks like with this one is it looks like the base of the block where the liner sits in is not parallel to the top of the block. Getting these studs out is an absolute nightmare, so we're not even going to attempt to do that. Clock the liner rather than try remachining the base, because that could end up an absolute nightmare. I think what Bob wants to do at this stage is clock that liner. Might have to lift the block up at the base to get the liner flat, which is then obviously going to put the top of this block out slightly, and then we're going to face around the top of the block with a long series end mill. So we'll get this on parallels once that job is finished, because I'm using the parallels at the minute, and we'll first of all we'll put it on the parallels as it is, and we'll clock these liners and see how far out they actually are in comparison to the top of the block. Right guys, so the Alfa Romeo set up here on the milling machine. You can see I'm chomping away on the outside of the block. So what I've done is I've used our trusty DTI gauge. I've took the liners out and I've clocked the base where the liners sit from end to end, and it did sort of appear that the block was a little bit this way, sort of about 3 thou, but this side was a little bit more than that, so it was almost a bit like this. So what I've done is I've trued the block up and got the bottom of the base there dead true. I've then fitted the liners and clocked the top of the liners, and sure enough the liners are parallel now with the bottom, and clocked from end to end within about 1/2 thou. So a bit of jiggery pokery, just putting feeler gauges under the parallels. So we've got that side of it done. Now what we're doing is we're just facing around the side of the block. Then what I'm going to do is clock the block again, and with the DTI gauge I'm going to see how much protrusion we've got on these liners, make sure it's all consistent, and I'm going to take each liner down on the lathe to within, just stop this, to get our 2.5 to 3 thou protrusion. So yeah, bit of a jiggery pokery, guys. Just a case of sort of putting, you know, these sort of putting these shims underneath the parallels. So now basically the base of the block is not exactly parallel. We're only talking sort of 4 or 5 thou, but to get the base of the liners parallel with that, we're going to have to try and remove these studs and face down the bottom, which is a right old rigmarole. So for the sake of 4 thou from end to corner, it's not really worth doing that. The block is actually line, but it's only this face that's going to be out. If you're going to ask, the block has been line bored to that machine face down the base there, so we know that the crank's in line with the liners. So we're just going to finish this corner here, guys, and then we'll get the DTI and check the liner heights. So guys, we're just on the last liner now. So what I've done is I've clocked the face of that liner, obviously measuring all the way around from the base to the top, making sure that that is parallel to each other, which it is, all of them. So we've clocked the front now in the lathe, and we're just doing 3 thou cuts until I've took 13 thou off these liners, and then we know we've got a 3 thou protrusion, 2.5, 3 thou, and that is done. So yeah, surprising really, just such a small job like this, but to get it absolutely right with these liner heights, it is quite difficult. Right guys, so I had to film this. My mate Dave from Astbury motorworx has turned up in a genuine E30 M3. So we've just been for a little spin. He's let me drive it. As you can imagine, got the serious bug to get our car done. Not that it's going to be like this. This is obviously genuine. But it's quite nice to see one in the flesh, and it's nice to see one being driven properly in this horrible, crappy weather. So Dave's had this car apparently for, I think he said about 13, 14 years. Paid next to nothing, as you can imagine, back then for it. So if we just have a little look, but obviously now it's worth an absolute fortune. Got all the original interior, although he said it looks like it's been retrimmed at some point in a slightly different colour, but it's a lovely, lovely colour. Yeah, left-hand drive, they're all left-hand drive, I do believe. But it's just makes me smile now. One, how Dave uses this, as it should be, and two, sort of how rare absolutely everything is on it. Having looked for bits for our bloody E30, when you just look at bits like that are on this, that are all genuine, I mean, just astronomical money now if you can get them at all. But yeah, really, really nice to see it. There is only one subtle difference with Dave's car, and it's one of the reasons I'd say Dave is solely responsible for the fact that I want an E30 with an S50 in it. And the reason is because he's got an S50 in it himself. So a lot of the purists will say that this car is ruined. Dave said he's had it before where people have sort of lost their rag and got a bit narky because he's got an S50 in it. But if you drive it, it just makes the car. I mean, these cars are meant to have a 6-cylinder in. This is a 3-litre one that he's got in there. And yeah, drives absolutely brilliant. So torquey. I mean, these cars are, you forget how small these cars actually are now. But yeah, absolutely fantastic bit of kit. And can't thank Dave enough for letting me have a go in it. But yeah, just looking at the little bits that I bought already for ours, like the headlights and the grille, the genuine E30 M3 indicators, for example. Paid about 300 quid for a pair of them, but you just can't, they're not the same as the other E30 ones, so it has to be done. But yeah, I'll be quite interested to see how our fiberglass kit, when it turns up, how it fits compared to the original. I shouldn't think it's going to be anything like that, but we shall see. But yeah, you can see See on this M3 here where all the back's different, this is all just an add-on really from onto the standard E30 chassis. So this is all just an extension really with a bonded in rear window. Ordered all the windows for ours yesterday in plastic, but thermo formed and hardened, so you've got all the original curvatures on the glass and what have you. And you see on the rear windows different on the M3 because you've got the black around the edge, so this is bonded in as opposed to just sealed in. But yeah, lovely bit of kit, massive soft spot for these, and cannot wait to get ours done now. So Paul, the crank is in the V8.
It is, yes.
One problem after another.
It is.
The last 2 or 3 weeks.
One thing after another, isn't it?
Tell us about the problem you had this morning.
Well, these are oversized mains.
So these are all the bearings that are turned up from BMW, which are now correct.
But obviously, they're not just oversized mains, they're oversized thrust as well.
Excellent. So what he means by that is we've obviously had to grind the mains to 0.5. BMW lists 0.5, although they sent us standards when they were meant to send us 0.5s. They are actually colour-coded as well. Fortunately, the only one colour that is available, we have gauged and comes up all right on the clearance, doesn't it?
Yeah, about 2 to 2.5 thou.
Yeah, but BMW have a habit of whenever they supply an oversized shell, they go up on the thrust width as well. So because this is 0.5, I think this went up about 20,000 on the
yeah,
the
John had to grind the thrust basically this morning.
John's had to set the crank up and grind the thrust.
Grind the thrust. So
we're not having a lot of luck.
the crank's in. I've talked it to its first stage, which is 20 newton meters, which is basically, you know, you'd seat in the main caps really.
Yeah.
No dowels in these main caps as well, so you've got to make sure they're lined up properly.
Right.
So,
what about the thrust main? How do you go about that? Just plonk it in?
Well, you've got a groove on the bearing.
Yeah.
It slips into the tag, or slips into the groove in the main cap, so
I see.
you can get them lined up fine, but obviously the main cap you've got to get right, so it's just a case of making sure you decide that they're even basically, it's not squiffy.
I see. And then you've got the bolts that go in the side of the...
Yeah, so a lot of these bolts, they're the oil pump bolts onto.
Oh, I see.
So they're not really necessarily part of the torque setting on the main caps. So the oil pump obviously sits over there, so you've got, I think, 6 bolts are in the oil pump.
Yeah.
And you've got a few more for the windows tray. And these obviously are, they call them in the manual, the correct term is, what is the correct term? Thread support bushings.
Nice.
So we're putting new ones of them in, so I'm fairly certain what you do is obviously you bolt everything down and then you screw these in just to a seat basically.
Yeah.
So you touch the block. So when you torque these up, you've got to make sure these are wound in.
Okay. So we're getting there, we'll ignore the phone. But we're getting there, Paul.
We're getting there, mate, you know.
Heads are done in that box down there.
Yep.
So yeah, fingers crossed we can actually get an engine finished in the next week or so.
Well, it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of waiting for parts for 75 years.
Exactly, yeah. So we've got the good news on the pre-cross flow as well. That's on its way back. That's been line honed to suit these steel main caps.
Yep.
Heads all done. So that really should be Meccano.
Yeah, we've already checked the piston deck sort of protrusion, haven't we? So the pistons are all machined.
Yeah.
So it's basically putting the bottom end together and then bolting the head on, isn't it?
Yeah, so all the bits are down here. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I know I keep saying it, but we could have an engine or two finished.
Yep.
I'm going to get the phone. So guys, good news on the kit car. We put it in for an MOT yesterday and it has gone through. It did actually fail straight away because of the brake lights, but fortunately it was just a disconnection on one of the wires. So that has all gone through. Isaac has given it a good clean, although it is peeing down today, a bit different from yesterday, but apparently we've only got this for half of tomorrow and then we're back to lovely weather at the weekend, so we can give this thing a good test on the road before our track day, fingers crossed, providing the weather's okay, on Monday, Bank Holiday Monday. So if any of you guys are down Perranporth way, then please feel free to come down, say hello. Always good to see you guys. But yeah, kit car's on the road, so quite happy to test out these new R888s when the weather's good. Again, thanks very much for Dave Astbury for coming down his E30 M3 today. Absolutely made my day, made me week actually, and it's done nothing but just give me that edge now to chase up all the bits and get our E30 finished. Although it's not a genuine M3, I'm sure it's going to be pretty good fun with that S50 in it. But yeah, thanks ever so much for watching, guys. Until another video, take care, enjoy your evening. We'll see you then. Cheers, guys.